at the moment.
That's like, honestly, that's like television's version of Ambien for me. Because I'm terrible at golf,
Uh-huh.
and just watching it on TV and listening to the guys, I'm just like,
Oh, it's a
oh,
great thing to nap to.
yeah.
Yeah. Ty-
All right, we're going to take a little break here. I want to tell you about something pretty amazing that we stumbled upon. A little ways back, we interviewed this amazing dude, Kwame Bowen, and he shared with me after the episode that his mother is a poet. And what's awesome about that is that he has all of her writings and all her poems, but what he doesn't have is her reading them. That inspired Keith and I to then start recording videos for our daughters.
And as we started recording those videos, we started running into the challenges of where are we going to send them to our daughters? How are we going to get them to them? Where are we going to save them? Is it going to be Google Drive? Is it going to be OneDrive? And then along came GiftPod. It's an audio memory that you can record and give as a private podcast. What they're going to do is edit, add music, and produce the audio that you provide them into a professional podcast that you can share with your family members for any purpose. We use it for our daughters in the future.
All right, so check it out. In the write-up for this podcast, you're going to see a link to GiftPod. If you use promo code MIC10, you're going to get a discount. And leave some amazing memories for your friends, family, loved ones, maybe for yourself. Why don't you time capsule this for yourself? I don't know.
So check them out.
giveagiftpod.com.
MIC10 promo.
All right, welcome back to More in Common Podcast. I am your co-host Keith with my man Rodney, and today we are with Jason Ferrari, often referred to as Ferrari, who is a longtime friend of ours, and we are very excited to have him with us today.
Colloquially.
He has a combined 25 years of sales and marketing experience and currently works as a social media strategist for major technology and electronics brands. He comes from a radio background with a majority of his experience in the Chicago market. He first embraced online radio back in 2010, where he was co-host of The First and Long with Brendan McCaffrey and Jason Ferrari, the morning show. And since then, he has been co-host of two very successful podcasts, the Abaticola and Ferrari Discuss Everything show, and the Sports is Life pod with Matt Abaticola and Jason Ferrari. He recently launched his first solo podcast, the Not Your Parents' Basement Show with Jason Ferrari, where he has a different guest each episode, and they discuss living, loving, laughing, and learning with the goal of helping to promote stronger mental health. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I read that a little choppy today. My brain is working much slower than my mouth, which is a role reversal in life usually.
You should have told. I mean, I would have read it, man, but it's all good.
No,
Jason,
I thought I was ready for it. I was ready for it, and
I thought you did good. I want to big you up. You did good.
Yeah,
appreciate it. Yeah,
it was. It's always fun hearing about yourself.
Having someone else
Jason,
read your
it
words.
was fun to come on your podcast, and I'm glad that you're on ours now.
Yeah, I'm glad. I honestly, I can't believe that much time has passed. I remember when we were talking about it, because that was probably
in August, I think.
Or early September-ish, maybe August, and I go to like look at available dates. And I'm like, November, and it would seem so far away. And then I got your little reminder email. I'm like, okay, we're here. We're in November.
Now I need my invite, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll bring it full circle.
Full circle, maybe.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see if you're in it.
So let's get right into it. So Not Your Parents' Basement Show has the goal to promote stronger mental health. So how did that goal come about? In other words, what is the driving force behind the goal to promote stronger mental health?
Well, I can start by giving you the driving force behind the name. So on my previous shows, we would have a lot of people who had opinions, and the running joke was, how's life at your mom's house in the, in the basement? Like, I mean, that was kind of a common thing. And I'm like, all right, so that was a no brainer in naming it. And, I find, if you listen to any of the previous episodes, there's a little bit of laughing, but it's kind of different than anything else I've ever done, because I really want to understand, how the guest thinks, what they're all about, what's going on in their life. And then unfortunately, the commonality with everybody is that we're all kind of stuck at home and dealing with this very similar thing, on a bigger scale. If you have a family, if you have kids, it's even more intense. And as I was kind of crafting the show, and then as this pandemic started to hit, I just, in my own mind, before I even read stats, I'm just like, mental health is going to be a major issue. I guarantee suicide is going to go up. Domestic violence is going to go up. Like, anything that was already bad is going to be worse when you're stuck at home and you have no contact with anyone. So for the show, through the exploration of like what we talk about, I always want to kind of veer it towards, okay, so what are you doing to, to get around that, to feel better about it? How are you accepting this? Like, how do you get through your day? How do you function? Because it's not like me preaching mental health to them. It's, I'm feeling better through this conversation. So it's,
So it's
as
kind of your
hopefully,
therapy.
yeah, it ends up being as therapeutic for me as it is for them. Because I think, Rhonda, you remember when we had a conversation on the show, like, sometimes it's just not easy to talk about that stuff, or you're just not asked very specific questions about it. It's just like, how you doing? Surviving. It's like the start of every work call. It's the same question, same joke.
It's so exhausting.
It's like, yeah, we are surviving, but like, seriously, how do you get through
How
your
about
day?
that weather?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, weather. And how are you doing during COVID? Okay, great. So now we
Are you
have
staying
another,
safe? Stay
we have
safe.
another 58 minutes to address. Yeah. So I mean, that's it. Started off being like, I just wanted to really get to know the guest on a deeper level and not ask like simple cliche questions. And then it's still evolving into a more like real time, instead of it being very general and like mental health in general, like, we're all dealing with something very, very, very aggressive. And it's something that we as like a planet have not dealt with this in over 100 years. So I
So
don't make it about pandemic, but like, it's obviously a big part of how people are living during this.
well, it's part of the impetus for the podcast in general. So it's kind of woven, interspersed in there. What is, Keith? I bet it's the same question.
No,
Jason,
it's not.
What started? So was the pandemic? Was the pandemic?
Like, seriously? Like,
I told you.
like, did you come back to that? Like, in your brain, was it something else first, and then you said
No,
that?
it was.
And
I'm just
became the same question that I
stating
was
it
actually
differently. But
going
it's the
to
same
ask.
question. We twin brain a lot, Jason. And ask.
This one I don't
over
like.
the other
This
person,
one's a
but
little
ask the
freaking
question
me
for
out.
them.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
when I had, I mean,
This one's
when I had a
freaking me out.
co-host, and we think very similarly as well, Matt Abaticola, that would happen all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I would start to talk and I'd look at him and I knew, I'm like, we have the exact same question, or the same thought. So
yeah, I'm just sitting here like checking off questions on my list.
Continue asking our question, Rodney.
Was the pandemic the start of your personal mental health journey, or what has it been for you?
No, I'd say I've been dealing with mental health issues, in one way or another for 30 years. I think, I started to notice something was off, but, when I was in high school, but
what was that like? Like, take us back to high school Ferrari.
It's one of those things where like, why am I like so like anxious all the time? Or why do I have like these weird mood swings? But like, you're a teenager, I know nothing about this. So I just think it's like normal teenager stuff. So I don't ever say anything, you just live your life. That's kind of like what most people do. Oh man, sometimes I get bummed out. Happens to everybody, and that in some cases is true. But I mean, so, I've been on medication for not 30 years straight, but like on and off throughout that time span. Um, kind of trying to deal with it. And I think in my own mind, I thought that was like the fix, which, that's even common today. I mean, I'd say now it's insane, like how rapidly a doctor will like prescribe you something, and neither of you know what's going on in your head. So I'd say for me, a lot of it is chemical. So like medication does the right medication, and that's hard. Like finding the balance of things that actually work, because there are so many side effects that people go off this stuff because it's not worth it. You gain weight. It's like those those commercials where like the commercial itself is like 20 seconds and then the last 40 are the side effects. That kind of thing.
And some of the side effects
Oh my
include
God.
the original condition.
Yeah,
worse.
that's true. You're taking the medication is for insomnia, and then the side effect is it causes insomnia. Yeah. So I think obviously the other component of it is therapy, and the problem that I came across, and I'm not saying that I've been in therapy for 30 years, but I mean, like anytime I would try, it's very hard to find one that's helpful for you. You need to find like a match. And until way more recently, like within the last year, like I never really found one that truly helped. Like, and now I have, but I think it's because they call me on my shit. They challenge me. It's not just someone sitting there with a notepad listening to you and then, okay, your time's up. It's like, well, I could do that without you, So when you get someone who's like, wait a minute, now that doesn't register with me. Like, you explain that a little bit more, and then it makes you kind of dig in, because none of us are equipped to figure this out ourselves. So
you said you were feeling anxious as a teenager. Are you taking medication for anxiety, or like?
Yeah, and what's weird is, for me, it's never been the same throughout life. So let's say, obviously life circumstances affect some of your psyche, that it doesn't mess with the chemical stuff, but I think the brain like kind of counterbalances. So the anxiety I was feeling was my brain was working really, really fast. And if stuff was happening, if I'm in a class and I've already picked up this material, like I want to move on, it was like, so it was like life anxiety, situational anxiety, never really social anxiety. I was definitely like class clown, like I could run a room if I needed to, like stuff like that. But but then it would all of a sudden, like my mood would tank, and I would just be like bummed out. I would still go out and do stuff and function, but it was like acting. It was like exhausting, because you feel all those things, you have no idea why they're happening, and you act as if, you act like everything's normal. And I mean, after a certain amount of time, like, I'd say within the last couple of years, I was just exhausted from like faking it, like even in social situations, which are supposed to be fun, I was like stressed out because, it's a real ass thing. And, people don't, some people, like my parent, like my mom, like understands it, believes in it and stuff. But my dad, he's in his 70s. He would never take a pill or talk to anybody, like, ever. So
have you talked to your mom like about was there a point as a teen or maybe as a young adult where you had conversations with any family members about it? And have there been, well, I'll stop there.
Well, I think I was, most parents would probably chalk it up to being an obnoxious teenager, myself included. Like, I was just like, I'm a teenager, The thing is, though, and in retrospect, I wish I would have, I never said anything to like my friends, because those are the people that you like confide in. But I was so uneducated about that it was actually anything, that I felt like it'd be weird if I was like asking friends, hey, do you ever feel like super anxious? And, or I wouldn't even have known to use the word anxiety, you know. It was just like I get aggravated or frustrated, you know, like I wouldn't even know how to explain it to anyone else.
As a group of teenage, well, was your friend group mainly male or was it pretty mixed?
I mean, I'd say like that changed pretty rapidly. You know, if we're talking about
right.
if we're talking about freshman year, yeah, none of us are with girls. But then by like junior, senior year, yeah, there was like ladies everywhere, you know. So it was, and then that was its own adventure.
Because I was getting ready to assume that your group was all male, and I was going to ask, as teenage males, how likely do you think that group would have been to respond, or how would they have responded to you saying,
A, I can't explain it. B, will they be able to relate if I can't explain it? And odds are, if it's happening with them, they can't explain it. So I just felt like I'd be like throwing out these things, like these feelings and thoughts that I had no explanation for myself, and they'd be like, "Yeah, I got nothing," you know, or they'd think something was wrong with me. So I never said anything.
Were you given medication at that time?
Not right away.
How old were you when you first got medication?
Probably 17.
Yeah, that's how old
How old were you when you first saw a therapist?
Like probably it was like either the end of freshman year or the beginning of sophomore year, I'd say.
How did that work out?
Psychiatrist or?
Yeah, but what was really weird, I only know that it's weird now because like now I've been in therapy in one you know, in various capacities for years, but it was me and my parents. Like at first, I didn't get to talk to this lady myself, so I was like, why would I you know, and that's like setting yourself up for failure. Why would I be 100% transparent and honest while my mom and dad are sitting here who are making me come here, you know? So you almost like resent the fact that you're there. Like there's nothing wrong with me. You know, it's your brain just doesn't get it at that young age. You know, it's not supposed to. In a lot of cases, like puberty is what launches it. Like that's that puberty like turns that part of your brain on, that chemical imbalance. That's why like kids generally aren't like anxious, yeah, but depressed. You know, I would imagine that's way less common, and it definitely was then. So
it's this interesting, especially in the time that you grew up. It's at a time where therapy is becoming a thing, but it's still not. And you certainly aren't talking about mental health, so we don't have the words. And
the meds too. I didn't know anyone on meds, and that's when they were like, that's when like the most popular or the biggest one was like Prozac.
Totally. I mean, and it was like thrown around. And I mean, I was prescribed antidepressants when I was 17. To your point, the quickness to prescribe medicine. I talked to the psychiatrist for 15 minutes and then he popped me some pills. And that was the end of that conversation.
I'm curious around end of freshman year. So at some point you did talk about it, and then it went to therapy. Because I know if I talked about it, it'd been like, actually, I don't know what it would have been like if I'd have said how I felt about things. I have no idea. But like, we definitely didn't talk about anything around mental health in the house or in the family. So I'm like, what was the conversation like, and how did it progress to therapy? Because to me, that's just I don't see any road that I would have ended up in therapy as a high schooler.
Yeah,
and I think it's a good thing. I think that's an awesome thing. I'm just curious how that works.
Conceptually, yeah. In theory, yeah, it's a good thing. But if you have bad therapists, it's almost more damaging. I think
that
because you know the medication gets prescribed, and you're kind of like, oh, so this is gonna fix it, like, you know. And I didn't have, like, the problem was the way that this thing started was like I was being like a jerk at home. And so it was pitched to this woman, me being difficult with my mom and dad there. So like therapy never took a turn to where it was like focusing specifically on me and why are you acting like this and stuff like that. So it put a bad taste in my mouth to the point where I didn't even explore it for years because I was just like, is this what therapy is? You know, until
I had the same experience, man. Like, and I think that there's so much danger, to your point. I mean, puberty kicks off all of these things. And as we get older, we still get anxious and we still get depressive.
right.
At the same time, you have hormones going out
Oh yeah.
everywhere, all new. Your body doesn't know what to do with them. So it's exacerbated. And yet we treat it like, they're just a teenager. Like, and we still do that to this day. We'll talk about it more with teenagers, but there's this over index rather than an understanding of the balance. And then how do we work through it to teach the tools at a younger
think that's
age
part of the
versus
challenge
giving,
too.
Right.
versus
Well, what
just
people don't
giving
understand,
medication, right?
people don't understand is like, it doesn't just appear at puberty. It's in you. It's in your DNA. It's
Right.
in your chemical makeup. It's amplified by puberty. So it's basically a combination of whatever underlying mental health issues that you have and puberty. And a teenager doesn't even know how to explain what's going on with anything. All the body changes. Mental is way worse, way more intense.
Totally.
But you don't even know that something's wrong. So I mean, like,
read,
that's why I think people in college started to like go see the counselor, like deep into college. Before then, people would just deal with it. You know, I never knew anyone who was in therapy.
That kind of makes sense. And to your point, Keith, and actually to yours too, Ferrari, I think it's, I mean, look at what brain science, like, look at what we've learned in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years about the developing brain and the things that affect it. Like, it's changing monthly. And so understanding, I mean, the teenage mind is a highly dynamic environment, especially, and then you start piling in the external signals, which are coming at a rate that's way beyond what we grew up with. Like, how do you coach that from like all the things you're talking about, the hormones, the
plus
brain development, the balance?
I don't think people necessarily factor in like all the ancillary things, you know, where it's okay, you've got a chemical imbalance, you're going through puberty, everything's changing, but you're also like at the most impressionable point in your life. So like stuff that's going on around you, someone's saying that, you know, a pill's not going to help. You don't need to take a pill. You don't need to talk to anybody. Just get over it. You know, like you get that part, or you get the way too sensitive. Oh, well, you know, and you're coddled. It's like, no, I need a balance. I need somebody to
but
ask
those kind of things,
right
to your point, stick with you.
Yeah, they do. Exactly. And that's how you approach mental health for the rest of your life, unless you are fortunate enough to, and I'm like an obsessive researcher because I'm, you know, if I know I'm going to walk into a doctor's office and they're just going to bust out a prescription pad, I know every medication that would be an option. I know everything about it. I know the side effects. I know the dosage. I know I read testimonials and I'll be like, I've read horrible things about that, or odds are I've been on it. You know, and if you think about it over like a 30-year span, like not that many new things are coming out, or they're just a different version of the same thing. So, you know, I like to understand that, and then I'll actually say, you know, if I'm almost like interviewing. It's almost like I'm interviewing therapists for me to hire them to say,
that's what it should be.
I need constructive criticism. I need feedback. I need to walk away from every session with an action item, something that I need to come back to. And if I was a lazy ass, or if I didn't believe in it and I didn't do it, then call me out on it. You know, it's not like I need to be yelled at, but it's like I can literally vent to myself, and that's not helpful.
I'm curious to dig in, because I mean, you said something very important. I think that idea that how you first enter therapy. We've talked to some past guests on this. How you first enter therapy can paint how you pursue it, right? If you have a really bad therapist or someone who just sits down with you and gives you pills and then doesn't talk to you about anything that's going on, did that for me. I mean, it was 25 years before, or 20 years before I sought a therapist again.
Or your parents force you to do it, which is way worse.
A way worse situation. Yeah. And whatever. So you'll create resistance. How did you It's two questions. How did you come to the place where you got back into therapy? And two, you said something at the beginning, it takes, you have to find the right therapist. And I totally agree with that. How did you go about sticking to it until you found the right therapist?
Well, I think there's a lot of, it's kind of like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of like real time things that are going on. So, I felt like I was kind of running on, like it was on autopilot. Like life wasn't great. Life wasn't bad. I had met someone, we were dating, like I moved up to Madison from Chicago, to live with her for a couple of years until we moved back to Chicago. So everything was like all right. I wasn't in that horrible headspace. But more recently, and I know this is dropping a bomb, but we decided that we were going to get divorced, and I was like, obviously that's trying on its own. That's its own.
When was this?
Late 2019.
Okay.
Probably like a year ago.
Yeah.
And there's no way I was going to be equipped to deal with that on my own. There's not a chance. And then add in all the other stuff where as soon as like, I don't know, it's my first time going through it. And to be honest with you, I have friends who have, but we've never really like talked about like, how did you feel right when it happened? It's more like trying to make them feel better about it, not bringing it up, which is so not me, but I'm just so unfamiliar with it. I just kind of was like, I'll go with what they're comfortable with, kind of thing. But as soon as that happened, like in my brain, I instantly felt like that's to me like a major life failure, and I think I just put a lot on myself, and I'm like, man, it's time to definitely time to re-engage that whole therapy thing.
How long were you married?
Quick.
Well, technically I still am, because as soon as like COVID hit, that kind of, the paper part kind of
Sure
fell by the wayside a bit. It's a little hard to get a court date and stuff like that. So, but we were married for, well, I mean, now we're, approaching a fourth year, but 3 years before that topic came up. But as soon as that happened, anything that I thought was like good, or at least like tolerable, that I dealt with throughout life, all came back, just because it's just kind of like, I feel like I failed at something very important. And now the anxiety's back. Now the depression's back. Now, like, it's affecting my ability to function. It's affecting my ability to sleep. And I know that a pill isn't going to help. Well, that's not true. It helps with the chemical part. But I got a lot of other stuff that I'm not going to sit there and internet research and try to be a shrink for myself. So, and I was very fortunate that the first person I reached out to is my therapist now. Like, she's great. She's great. She calls me out on stuff. I always have an action. I always leave with something, and then I come back and I'm like, yeah, I tried to do this, this, and this. This didn't. I still don't understand like what exactly you mean, or doing it wrong, or it's just not working, or whatever. But yeah, so
couple things in there. It's heavy. It is heavy. You've said, I think twice now, either that I'm or we're not equipped to do this on our own, or you're not equipped to do it on your own as Jason. How did that become? It sounds like it's a thing that you believe to your core. Like, how? Yeah. If so, if that's true, how and why?
You know what? I think that's really, it comes down to like who you are, and like who you surround yourself with, because you hear a lot of people say that I tried it, it didn't work. But unfortunately, that generally means that they had a bad one. Well, you know what? And I'm not like throwing around the word bad lightly. It maybe is a bad fit for you, or they don't have experience with exactly what's going on with you, which makes sense because we all have our own stuff going on. And sometimes it's a combination of things that is like how do you even address this? I mean, that's definitely how it is with me. The thing is, I think because even though it was a bad experience, I've been on medication and talking to people in one way or another for, 3 decades. I know myself, and I know when like I am completely unequipped to deal with this right now. But you've got to be open-minded to it too, and unfortunately, like, you need to have people who, when you tell them that you're on medication for depression or anxiety, when you tell them that you're in therapy and it's helping, they don't talk shit about it. They don't like push you down and be like, why do you even need that? It's like, because not
That's weak,
everybody can be
son.
as perfect
Why are
as
you in
you,
therapy? That's weak.
like, yeah. So I'd say like a lot of it is like being intuitive and knowing what's going on with me and when it's time to like to dig back in and try and figure stuff out. But also just having a good support system. I'm lucky. I'm fortunate in that way that people are supportive and not the opposite. And if anybody is like that, I don't need that kind of toxic stuff, and they're out of my life or they've been out of my life. So
Rodney, do you think we're equipped for it?
No, I just want to know why it's his framework.
Yeah, I was just curious to get your.
Well, during our conversation, you even said like you're finding out stuff about yourself just by being open to it. I mean, it doesn't even.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff. Yeah, it's just like, man, you know what? There's a lot of weird stuff going on that I don't know that I have any control over. I need to figure out why, and and I can't do it on my own. It's just thinking that and saying that out loud is like not even a step. It's just all of a sudden like something clicks, and you're like, damn. And if your friends can't help you with it, or your parents or whatever, then you need someone who literally went to school for this.
Completely agree. I think we're communal, and I don't even, I think some of it's the school part, some of it's therapy. I think I've had therapists I liked, therapists I didn't. I haven't had that. I think maybe a handful, and I think as I've gotten to know myself, or as I've grown to different stages, that's changed what I wanted out of a therapist or what I needed probably. And then there were some that just weren't fits. Like I think personality matters, and it's kind of like dating or friends. Like you got to get along to some point to where you trust and can share and are going to take the advice that's given or try it, to your points.
Right. Or at least you hear it, it's not like someone's talking at you and you're just like, yeah, can we get this over with? It's like, or sometimes they'll say 20 things and one is helpful. Good. Because that's one thing I wouldn't have come to on my own. There's
a reality of taking, like when we seek medical treatment, we often defer to authority. Mm-hmm. So our doctor, it could be the worst doctor on the planet, but they're a doctor, you're in their office and you're not necessarily thinking he's an idiot, or she, I'm going to go find somebody else. You're like, oh no, I have this terrible life-threatening thing. And every other doctor says, no, you just stubbed your toe, right? Like we don't do that well as a cognitive being, let alone when we're going to see somebody that says that could be bad. We don't know how to assess it. Like to your point, we're not equipped to necessarily handle these things on our own. And we go somebody that's not equipped to handle my stuff. Like, and then it's like, well, that's just a waste of time, or I don't need to go find somebody else because they're all bad just because of this one bad one.
Right.
And we defer to that authority. It's
Keith, I'm glad you asked that, because the reason I asked you, Jason, is I think that your willingness to be open to that is what's let you explore therapy and medicine and different avenues for finding what mental health looks like for you, which will be a question later. But I just ask for the listeners because I think I know I didn't have any kind of access point to therapy for a very long time. I didn't have a way to embody that sentiment to where I could go talk to somebody else about what's going on in my head. So I think that could be helpful for somebody maybe who doesn't know what to do, but knows something is off. It's like, hey, it's okay. None of us are equipped for this.
Right.
There's a lot coming at us.
And two things. One, like, I think if people were more practical about it, and approach it like, you know what, a psychologist obviously is a different kind of doctor, or not necessarily like an MD, where a psychiatrist is an MD who still can listen to patients and prescribe and stuff. But, you know, I had severe back problems over a 10-year span, and then did everything, exhausted every option, and then ended up doing like the spinal surgery. But like, that was something where like it was a defined ailment. We tried various things to avoid surgery. Surgery was the only thing, and surgery worked. Like, if people can like think of it that way, whereas if you literally take the effort to book an appointment with a psychiatrist or with a therapist, I mean, you walk in that door and be like, I'm here, like, I booked this. It's like any other ailment, but it's just the one that controls everything. The most important one is your ability to survive, function, thrive, feel joy, sleep, you know, all kinds of stuff. So, you know, I think it gets a really bad rap sometimes, or you feel like it's your last resort kind of thing, because you just definitely can't deal with it on your own. So, you know, but that's, you know, for lack of a better reference, honestly, like, I respect the hell up. You gotta have some damn balls, man. You gotta be like, I can't do this. Please help me. Like, you know, and you're not asking someone that you even know. So like, that should at least wipe away some of, if you have it, any kind of humility, because that's a big problem, man. People's pride and humility get in the way of their ability to get better mentally, and it's unfortunate, you know. But it's common, you know. It is what it is. And
the narrative of mental health has definitely improved in the last 5 years.
That's why I think people who are younger are in a much better environment now. Well, it's kind of like, you know, like, you've got 5-year-old kids who are on antidepressants. So that's like a little,
that's
like
extreme.
little extreme.
Yeah.
But like, the fact that, you know, in the 80s and early 90s, when I'm dealing with it, late 80s, early 90s, when I'm dealing with this, like, you didn't even hear about kids in therapy. No one was on medication. No one was on anything. Whereas
but
now,
5-year-olds around antidepressants is kind of an upgrade, because they used to be paint chips with lead. So
yeah,
you know,
we're getting better.
we're getting
just sniffing Sharpies and highlighters.
It's funny. I was talking to one of my groomsmen a while back, and I grew up with some misfits, right? My closest friends, like, we all had some things that we were dealing with, and they especially had some things. Like, I mean, the stories of the attempts, the ideas, the times where, like, it's horrifying to think for them. And I look back on it, I'm like, man, you guys never dealt with any of that. And they look back and go, man, you were on medication. We always thought you were the one that was messed up, right? And it's that.
Well, technically, yeah, but I'm trying to address it.
But I'm trying to fix it, right? And I'm trying to get to something, and that's kind of the mentality. It's just very difficult. Now, it leads to a question. You said it in the 80s and the 90s, and you alluded to your parents, and you kind of gave a bit of a suggestion to how it was. But what was it like growing up before all this was happening, as it was happening? I mean, you grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, so what was that?
I mean, honestly, very, I'd say, on par with normal suburban living. Thankfully, no like traumatic experiences or anything like that. It was pretty normal. You know, I went to Catholic school for 6 years, and then at junior high went into public middle school, and well, it wasn't called middle school then, but public 7th and 8th, and then public high school. That was all pretty normal. I'd say like the biggest life shift for me was, my younger brothers were born. I have twin younger brothers when I was like almost 9. So my thunder was stolen. I wasn't running things anymore. I went from the boss to like, he's fine. Like, I mean, thankfully they gave me anything that I ever needed, like from a emotional, support standpoint and everything. So no complaints there. I'm sure that did something, and I've kind of talked about it in therapy, but like, what's weird is, when you have brothers who are that, or siblings who are that much younger than you, like it got to a point where they're kind of experiencing like grade school and all these things, and I'm at bars, like that kind of life delta. And then as soon as they got old, as soon as they turned like 18, we got super close because it was like the first time I could literally identify with them. I could talk to them about senior year, and they were kind of starting to go to parties and like, so, and we're very close still to like now. So like when we try and dig back in and, in therapy and ask like, did that do anything? It would almost be easier if I like hated them right now and then be like, damn right it did. But like now I can't even put myself in an 8-year-old's headspace. So I know it changed something because I went from being an only child, not one new brother, but 2 at the same time, which demanded a lot of attention. So
how do you look at trauma?
I think there's probably not probably there's, I think there's like varying severity in it. It could be something major like a horrible accident or abuse of some kind, be it physical or mental or both. I think that's the high scale stuff, but I think a trauma could be like all of a sudden you were like the only child for a long time, almost approaching like double-digit years, and then you've got to share everybody with them, so I think that could be labeled as I think trauma is a pretty broad term. I think I mentioned it more in the nothing horrific happened to me kind of thing, but yeah, I'm glad you clarified that. So
how do you look at it, Keith?
Yeah, because I've had this reckoning with trauma in my last year. So I've been seeing a therapist for about a year, for the first time since I was in college. And one of the first conversations that we had was about trauma. And, I think socially we have the tendency to think, oh, trauma. Like we love to compare, right? We're social beings. We love to compare each other to each other and ourselves to others.
It is actually how our brains work too.
Yeah. And there's that mentality of, well, I know I'm hungry, but hell, I could be starving in a village without food.
Almost competitive to a point.
And what it does is it creates a in some cases, sure, if you're in a good positive space, it can help move through, and you could say, yeah, I mean, it could always be worse, right? But at the same time, that sentiment of it could always be worse belittles yourself to whatever it is that you're dealing with.
Right. Well, yeah, because it happened to you. So I don't care what happened to somebody else, because what does that have to do with anything?
And trauma, especially as children, manifests in so many different ways. And yes, there are some really, really extreme things that we could all look at and go, damn, I don't know how I would process that. But then everybody else has their own, and this is, going to the whole language of English. We don't have enough words to describe the different spectrums of what trauma would be. But I asked that because you talk about that situation, and it immediately makes me think like that would be very traumatic for a 9-year-old. Especially,
I don't know
twins,
that, or I would actually maybe disagree on definitions of trauma. I don't know that we need more definitions of trauma. We just need a more clear understanding of the fact that what's big T traumatic for me, or little t traumatic for me, has nothing to do with how you think about it.
Yeah.
Like that's the only thing that we need. And even you saying like nothing horrific happened in my life, maybe to an 8-year-old something horrific did happen in your life.
Yeah.
that
like,
you would look at now with an adult prefrontal
Right.
cortex and say that
Right.
wasn't horrific, but that
Well,
doesn't mean
as-
that an 8-year-old thought that.
as Keith was talking, like what kind of popped into my head, and I've been watching like a lot of random just sci-fi stuff lately, just to like, as a blind, like mindless, just get out of my own head kind of
A
stuff.
little escapism.
Yeah, but I was just thinking like maybe a better way to put it would be like some kind of a life-altering event, which means it could be on a small scale or on a big scale. But I just mean that like some kind of thing kind of stuck in your brain at age 8, 7, 6, whatever, and it changed your timeline. It kind of like, and the only way to ever realize that, because why in the hell would you ever be able to figure that out on your, I mean, like honestly, like even get remotely close to that, is someone who's trained to do this, to hear you say stuff about, let's talk about your childhood, and they'll be like, and they know, and then they dig, and then you figure it out. Because otherwise, you'll never know. You'll go to your grave, never have any idea that something that happened when you're 11.
Yeah, because when that timeline happened, your brain development changed, so you
think of things. Yeah,
you're unable to see it. I mean, you can't see it, literally, but like you can't think it. You can't, because your thinking is directly related to that thing. So it's a blind spot that somebody else would have to shine a light on. I like that. That's good.
Do you then? You kind of said this. Do you avoid reconciling the impact of your brothers being born because you love them now?
No, I've talked about it.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't know. Maybe I'm just, not being asked the right questions. But honestly, like we've never, and this isn't the first therapist I've had that I broached that topic with, because I always, like, they make me think back, and I'm just like, all right, what happened when I was like younger that was, not like I fell off my bike or, like normal kid stuff. That's obviously a significant event, especially like that late in life, like having that big of a separation. But like, I've never been able to get to if that like really altered my life. So I'm definitely
I don't
not
remember my childhood very well.
against
in
digging
general
in on it. I like, no one's ever really been like, all right, that explains a lot. Like it is a thing, but I don't know if it's like, I don't think there is a thing. Honestly, I've got multiple things. So
do you remember much of your childhood in general? Like I don't remember any of mine. Or much of it at all.
I'd say the stuff that I remember most, because it was like every day was pretty similar. It's you go to school, you play, you do your homework, you take a shower, you wake up, rinse and repeat. Weekends, you might have sleepovers and stuff. But I remember the sports. Like that's the easiest stuff to remember from childhood, like starting to play football in like 5th grade, and then playing basketball and running track, and that's like so easy to go back to. Like I could go back to specific games, specific plays, just because I think that's so tactical. Like it's not. I remember.
Well, also you've got adrenaline and other brain things happening that kind of hard code.
I think it just as much as like we were talking about life altering events or trauma or anything, like those highs and lows in sports totally affected my life, my competitive nature, like everything is all like a big part of like sport. Well, at least sports was a way to like express it, harness it, otherwise like random adrenaline and competitiveness and like weird life situations, it's just awkward for everybody. Why is
the wine tasting? I'm gonna win this bitch.
I'm gonna drink the shit out of that rosé.
Yeah.
Keith, do you remember much of yours?
I remember way more than I need to. Yeah. I remember.
Yeah, because see, some people, like my siblings, are like that. They remember it, and it's like a blank spot for me. And so, like when therapists ask me to go back, I'm like, but I found a couple modalities that work.
Yeah, they need to get specific, or just listen to what you say and then be like, let's explore that.
There are a couple of very, very big moments in my life that I have zero memory of. Apparently, when I was 8, I threatened to kill myself. It was the first time I ever went to therapy, and I have no memory of it. I have memories from when I was 6, when I was 5. I remember the slide and the jungle gym and the way my preschool looked. I remember where the cribs used to be. Like, I remember all that stuff. I do not remember this. And there's another one on the positive side. I've read about it. Some things that I wrote, that I started like a snow shoveling business with some friends, and it was for one winter, like clearing people's driveway. No memory of it.
I
No,
think
I
a
was about
common
14 years old.
misconception
It was weird.
is that people only repress negative memories.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like,
totally.
no, you can repress any memory.
Yeah.
You know, that's a success story, and you've repressed it somehow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
I have no memory of it. It's weird. But yeah,
Good
I
point.
have a lot of where my big memory gaps are after I moved to Chicago.
well, I have a lot of memory gaps from living in Chicago.
Does that have anything to
Not
do
self-induced.
with?
Not self-induced. Not.
Oh man, I have a lot of Lincoln Park memory relapse.
So one of the things that you brought up is the social environment, and you've kind of danced it a little bit, like the people you surround yourself with. Have you, like, what's that journey been like for you relative to the managing of your mental health, and where is it at today?
Well, I mean, like, I can use. Well, just think of it this way. I mean, like, you guys have known me for a long time, and we've obviously like hung out socially. So, like, that Jason that you
Mhm.
guys know was pretty much how I was all through high school, college, my young life, like younger 20s, and then like meeting you guys.
Great singer, by the way. Great.
Thank you. But like, so that was always like social butterfly. I don't mind. I never craved being the center of attention, but I didn't mind it when it happened. If like I was doing something entertaining, I didn't want to just be the guy. But it happened kind of organically. But as I've gotten older, and as like life changes happen, like, well, getting married, moving from Chicago, moving from my comfort zone to Madison, coming back to Chicago, and then really not, it was just so expensive. And like, I was kind of like going through the motions and going to bars, but I was always like, I don't want to go somewhere crowded. Like, and it's not like getting old stuff. I've literally developed the social anxiety. And I don't know. I don't know what did it. I think it's just that the stuff was starting to go on in my head where I couldn't hide it anymore. Like I mentioned earlier, you're almost like acting. I was still like, people were still wanting me to like, I'm not like a stand up, but like screw around and tell jokes and do all that stuff. And I could do that to a point, but then you put me into like a super crowded, loud environment. I'm just like, I'm not feeling it. And then,
So did you kind of feel like you had to be on
all the time? I still feel like that, even in work meetings and stuff, but it's easier now because I'm like sitting in, but like, well, I'm wearing like normalish pants right now, but I'm usually in like
thank you for
pajamas
wearing pants for this podcast,
Yeah.
Jason.
I'm wearing pajamas normally. No, the camera's not on, and I can like shoot a joke off here or there. No pressure. But like I do have a pretty big concern about how long this whole thing is going to last and what it's going to be like on the other side, because I went into it with social anxiety, and now I mean, we're probably minimum a year me being in an apartment by myself, so it's weird to have like social anxiety and not be with anyone. But I like it. I was a part of me before the pandemic hit. I was already dealing with it. And the way to like really deal with it is just don't go out, or if I do go out, small groups.
So I guess what I mean in the question is, like, with your friends, you talk about talking about this thing with people, and you can surround yourself with people who are like, oh dude, come on, man. Like, what
when you say this thing, you mean like mental issues or
mental, like you're going to therapy, you're on medication, you're seeking to find peace within yourself, and you're surrounded by, like, what's that evolution, and are you surrounded, obviously virtually, by people now who are more supportive of it? And have you had to get rid of people in your life? Like what's that ecosystem look like for you?
Well, I would say like a big thing that happened for me, like I didn't move to the city until I was 28, and that was almost like a life reset for me. I wasn't surrounded by like negative people or people who didn't believe in it, but at that time I also wasn't like, it was not dramatically affecting my life. You know, the people that I grew up with, who I wasn't necessarily afraid to bring it up with, but I didn't see any commonality. Like if I could tell that somebody else was going through something, then I could kind of like see if there was a parallel there. But like I could tell a big difference now with those people. They all have kids, and that opens up your brain. I mean, you guys both, I do not, but you guys, I know you guys both have kids. That completely opens up your brain to trying to not only keep your own life in check, but make sure that you can do everything for like another person. So I could see a significant amount of empathy come out of these guys that I grew up with, that they were never mean to me, never looked down on me, never said a word, just didn't talk to them about it. But now I could call up, and they've told me I could call up any single one of them, and I have, you know, and talk about it, because, you know, some of them have already gone through divorce. But all of them know that, like, especially now, I can just tell there's such a fragility to like my core group of friends and my family, because we're in such a weird thing, and all we want to do is like see each other and hug each other and do like what we used to do. So it's just, it's like it's just amplified so much when the stuff that you would normally lean on to help isn't really an option. So, but I mean, man, I swear, you know, it's drag. I think we've joked about it a few times about like Zoom and stuff, but it has kind of been a lifesaver. Just especially with my friends with kids, I understand that they don't want to risk anything, but at the very least, if I could see their face and they could see mine and they can see how I'm reacting, and sometimes I lose it, you know, it happens, but that's also something I'm not ashamed of or afraid of either. Like if I want to cry, I'm going to cry, you know, like it is what it is. So I do feel like anyone, if that was ever a concern of mine with an old group of friends, or my original, I should say, group of friends, it's not now. Like, and that's every single person, and anyone who has ever been like just a shithead, like they just were let go for whatever reason.
They found them. They found their ways out.
Yeah,
of the group.
people who are going to be like shitty about it generally are shitty about most
even if
things.
It's, exactly.
And,
that's just their perspective, right?
Yeah.
It's not like I'm like, you judged me, you're out.
I love you. You're amazing. What? You're seeking therapy, you idiot.
Yeah.
Right.
You're there's something wrong with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the divorce thing, I forgot I wanted to ask you one thing, and it's really raw. It's so you may, if you don't want to answer this, if you don't want to go there, it's fine. You mentioned it feels like a big failure, and you said I think you said that twice. How are you? No, not how are you. Where are you with reconciling that or dealing with that fact, or like that that sentiment of failure, and like maybe even before answering that, like what do you mean by saying it feels like a big failure?
Well, I feel like it, you know, it's kind of like when you know, it's one of life's biggest undertakings, you know, it's one of life's biggest commitments to, you know, commit yourself to another person. And obviously there's no guarantees that it's going to completely work out. You know, life changes. But personally, you know, like it does feel like I honestly, I don't know what other way to look at it. It feels like I failed at something, you know, there was nothing, like no cheating, no anything. It's just like, you know, it's like a grow apart, different interests kind of thing scenario, you know, it still sucks, but it sucks less that it's not like someone was like some bad thing happened, you know. But so in terms of
does that
how
make
I'm
it
like,
harder to deal with though, like harder to understand?
No, it's harder to get over it, right? Or it is harder because, like, think about it, if you are not, if you're in a relationship, or if it's a friendship, or it's a job or something, and it's just like the band-aid's just ripped off, like you're like, I don't need that person in my life, this is almost good news, you know. I feel like that's always easier. Like the fight, the thing like that is a natural breaking point, and you go separate ways. But like she's like my closest, she's like my best friend, so that's been a positive and been a negative because, like I still have her. She knows me better than anybody, but fortunately, like there's so much time has passed. That's like the only thing that's healing, at least in this situation, is like the time. You get used to that this person can still be in your life in some capacity, but not in the traditional husband-wife capacity. And I actually well, I was having this conversation with my therapist. We've had it multiple times because whenever I bring up Trish, she'll I can tell that she like it's not taking a physical note, but is like waiting for me to finish my sentence so she can pounce, kind of thing. And she actually was like, why are you being so like down on yourself and down on yourself? I'm like, it's not like every time we talk, I'm like, I'm a failure, I'm a failure, I'm a failure. I'm like, but you know what? I need you to allow me to feel like this, because what am I supposed to do? Just because you keep telling me that I don't feel like a failure, that all of a sudden it's just going to change, So she let me kind of do that, because I don't do that it's not like when we have the conversations, I'm just negative about myself like the whole time. So that's the only time that she really calls me out on being negative. And that I just told her, I feel like I'm being objective about it. Like this is legitimately one of the emotions I feel about it, is I failed at something that I really, that I seriously committed to and put effort into, so I think it's a natural reaction.
Outside of the emotion, it's a fact that it didn't work. Like it
right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's, it just seems like, I guess it's just on a bigger scale. I could start a project and fail at achieving that project, and it's not like I need therapy for it. This is something that this is with another human,
right.
So I take it a little bit more seriously, but yeah. So, I mean, thankfully
thank you
it
for
doesn't
sharing
like,
that, man.
Honestly, the funny thing is, outside of a handful of people, because I've been trying to, like, I don't want to just, COVID's been a bit of a bitch, because like I wanted to respect people and I wanted to tell them face to face. I don't want this to be in a text, but it got to the point where I was able to tell certain people I knew it wasn't going to stay. So I actually ended up having to like try to get people to do these, and if they couldn't, text them about it. But I mean, this is literally the first public space I've talked about it, and I don't have shame about it. It sucks, but that's, like I said, this is all therapeutic. So
you mentioned the word that has been very defining for my life, shame. What's your relationship? Wait, hold on. Before I ask this question, Keith, was there anything you wanted to follow up on for that last part of the conversation? You just had a real pensive look, so I just wanted to
taking it all in.
He's digesting.
Yeah.
What's your relationship with shame been throughout the decades, or what is it now? However you want to take it.
What's weird is shame's a tricky one, because especially on the front end, if you're like Keith is like way earlier than me, we're talking about like 8, but I'm like 14, and I don't know what shame means. I have no clue. I don't know, like, mental health. I don't know any of this stuff. Like I don't know anything. Like the shame, I feel, maybe started to come on way later in life, where I'd be like, I'm here now. Like I'm here in this, but like maybe I got let go from a job or whatever, or you're getting a divorce or whatever. It's I look back. It's like in retrospect, if I would have done this differently, and then I feel like deep shame that like I made that stupid ass choice, and now I'm here now. So like, if I have not necessarily identified shame all throughout, it's always when I like look back that I'm like, yeah, that totally screwed everything up, or it sent me in a different direction. It's one of those life altering things. But I mean, like, so I guess I take that word like very seriously, where like I look at time frames versus one little moment. Like, man, I was an idiot for like 4 years, like just something like that. And then I feel deep shame about it, But then it's also like you're feeling shame and you identify that you feel shame, but there's literally nothing you can do about it because you're talking about something that happened 10 years ago. So it's like this, it's like running on a treadmill sometimes with this, you know? You look back and you feel like crap about something, but there's nothing you could, there's no atonement, there's nothing you can do about it. But if you internalize it, that's what messes everything up. So like if I start to feel like crap about something, I get it out. I can't let it fester because all that does is make it just, it makes it so much worse.
How do you get it out? Do you call your therapist? Do you text your therapist? Like what's your release mechanism?
If it's, you know, generally if it's not, it's never, I don't want to say never, but for the most part, it's not something that's like really like I need to work on this like immediately. Like I can wait for my therapy appointment.
Gotcha.
But if it's something like pretty traumatic, or you know, something that I'm like, man, I really need to talk to someone. Like I have some, like my brothers, I have some close friends that I can reach out to, and Trish, just because like she, you know, being married to someone, they know, they're gonna know so much more than anyone else in your life ever. So if it's something that she is aware of from the past or whatever, she'll be a go-to too. And I'm really thankful for that, you know, because that would have, I think divorce is one thing, but like having that person kind of ripped from your life, I think would be, at least in my case, would be worse, because then I lose someone that I can like open up to. You know, now more than ever, you know, this is a very lonesome time. So having people that you're close to that know you, so I don't have to give them damn context. I could just say this thing's bothering me again, you know? So.
How are you feeling today, man?
I feel pretty good, you know, like, I started off my day, it was a real hoot. I have to get injections for, like several months ago, I was starting to feel really just off, like, physically. And it turned up like I did all these tests, went and talked to a specialist. I had this thing called like ischemia, which basically means, you have cholesterol, like high cholesterol, but it starts to deposit itself in places. So it was like in my around my pituitary gland, near my heart, near my lungs, like in my liver, like it just happens. So I get these injections to like break it up. But now due to COVID, they don't want, if it's not urgent, they don't want you going in there. So I had to be taught how to do it to myself. That's how I started my day. So after that, everything's super, right? No, but I wrapped up a huge project. I've got a lot of, you know, I feel good about kind of how the work week went. And obviously I was definitely looking forward to this. Like, this is fun for me, you know, because I think podcasting it's not just something that everybody does or everybody should do. Like that is like kind of how people approach it. But like, I like people who plan, research, have structure, care about how it sounds, how it looks, you know, and plus I know you guys, so it's a good day.
I'm glad to hear that. We have just a few minutes to wrap, but Rodney, did you have another question?
Yeah, just real quick on that, because you ended with this being fun, and thank you. Like,
thank you.
That's a compliment. Something you had brought up earlier about your own podcast is the work versus fun element, and like it's starting to feel a little bit more like work, trying to get it back to feeling more like fun. Is that just started happening, or where are you with that?
I'd say so. I have this is a really ironic thing that I'm about to say, but so I have one recorded that I need to, you know, edit and put out, and it was with these guys who do this podcast called Language of Bromance, who are like kind of improv guys, super funny, and we kind of got connected. I don't know if you guys have ever done the Follow Friday hashtag, and then there's another hashtag called Podern Family. So if you do Follow Friday, and whenever you put out an episode, put Podern Family, and then there's a Twitter handle that's called that, who puts it out so other podcasters find you. So that happened with this show, but we never actually were able to have them on when I was doing the Abaticola Ferrari Discuss Everything. So I had him on mine. So when I say it needs to be fun, and I literally interviewed improv guys and we were laughing our asses off the whole time. I don't know. I feel like I want my show to not just be helpful for me. So I'm trying to figure out ways, and I think a big part of it is guests who are outside of my comfort zone, outside of my wheelhouse, so I can just ask a couple of questions and they can just go and teach me and my listeners about what they're all about. And so I think, right now it just feels like a job, I mean, just booking people, getting them to commit, making sure that the episode goes well from a conversation standpoint, but also you guys, we've talked about this off interview, but like logistically, the ability and the platforms to record these things, sometimes it's just a complete nightmare. And then I have to spend 3 hours editing a 45-minute interview.
Yeah.
So there's a little frustration there and stuff, but I mean, like, I kind of put it on pause a bit just so I can tinker with the format and be more strategic about guests. Because I think now more than ever, myself included, anyone who listens to my show, any new people that come along, like, we all need a different perspective on life. But we also need to hear not only how people are dealing with the negative, but I want to talk to people who are super positive too, because I don't think that way all the time. I'm not built that way. And I want to make sure that, like, I've mentioned this to my friends, to my family, to Trish, like, I want joy back in my show. Like, I want to feel joy. And for a while there, I wasn't. So, I want to figure out how to get back there.
Took me a long time to rewire that mentality.
It really is. It's hard because it almost sometimes feels like work.
Yeah.
So, and that's just because that means you take it seriously, though. Also, so there are positives to that. It feels like work
because there are work elements to it.
There is the work element.
Like you said, I gotta book guests and
yes. Well, yeah, you guys. I mean, hey, guests are coming to you now, but I'm still. My show's new. I'm still hunting. Yeah. I'm still a hunter.
So we always wrap every show with one final question as we hit our time. Mr. Rodney.
Yeah, thank you for just
some giving this space.
It's really deep and like just also, I don't know if it's the dulcet tone of the Ferrari, but it's just like calm. It's like very calming, but like really deep and some really heavy stuff. But thanks for sharing and
yeah, I know that when we talked before, you kind of, and you even mentioned it once during this, like, if it's something I don't want to answer, and I was kind of thinking to myself over the last couple of days, like, what would I not answer? Like, what would I not want to answer? I couldn't come up with anything. So, but like, I appreciate, you guys asked thoughtful questions and then like insightful follow-ups and stuff. It's a very easy environment to feel relaxed. Like, so yeah, no, so I appreciate it. You guys are great. This was awesome. What's the final, what was that? The final question?
Final question is, what would you like to leave the audience with? What would you like to have them think about as we sign off?
Listen to my show? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kind of kidding. No,
check it out for sure.
Honestly, I think that the only thing that's more important, at least in my life, and I've been trying to share this with everybody I know, like, outside of reading, because like, you need some non-digital something, like something that doesn't involve a phone, a TV, a laptop. You need some kind of physical, like, real reading kind of thing, because I feel like people get away from that and then chaos ensues. But find podcasts to listen to. Because it's become like a way more productive part of my life by finding people who, like, I listen to comedian ones for obvious reasons, But like I said about reading the comedians' books, you get like all this deep stuff that they get into that leads to like their comedy, and it makes so much sense. So then when you see them again, like, oh my God, now I totally identify with that bit. But then, just listen to any, like, people who, I like the historical ones. Sometimes I'll listen to, I know Rodney, you mentioned on my show that you listen to like all the sci-fi ones and stuff. Periodically I'll check those out, especially ones about Marvel, because I'm obsessed with those damn movies, like but I love it because it takes you out of your headspace, but you always find something you can relate to, especially on the good, like when there's good interviewers, when there's a good open-ended question, not just yes or no crap. And I find, actually, we talked about this on the show too. I finally figured out a way that I'm not taking things unintentionally and incorporating it into my show. Like I think we specifically talked about where I was trying to craft Not Your Parents' Basement Show, and I purposely didn't listen to podcasts for a certain amount of time. So all of a sudden my show was like an amalgamation of 5 shows that I listen to on a regular basis. But now I've stopped that, and now I just listen and appreciate. Like I appreciate it. I'll be like, oh, that's a smart way to ask a question. Like that, I'll take that away, not structure, bits, concepts, like questions, and how people react, and how to make it feel like a safe space where you're going to get better answers. It's going to be more engaging. So read and listen to podcasts. Find them. You won't regret it. It's such a crazy popular medium now, but when you find a good one, it's kind of like game changing. They're amazing. I'm so glad they exist and that we're allowed to do stuff like this.